Hello, welcome to the WAQ Show. I'm your host, TJ.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Dan. And today we have a guest with us. He's a close personal friend of ours. He's got some really great gaming experience behind him for our topic today. Would you like to introduce yourself, Kyle?
Hi, I'm Kyle. I play video games. I'm slightly qualified.
There we go. And today's topic is going to be about difficulty in video games, which is a pretty hot button topic. It comes in and out of fashion. But the question specifically regarding it is going to be, is increasing difficulty in video games pushing us to become better gamers, or is it gatekeeping a certain degree of audience from enjoying games?
Did Matt introduce himself?
Yes.
He did. I heard him through the wall, but it did not come through Discord.
Oh.
That's what I thought happened, and I'm like,
Helps that we're, recording in adjacent rooms. So as you can see, Kyle, is a very professional, thing we're doing here.
Of course.
Like I said earlier, I'll be the whack one this episode.
there we go.
And why is that, Matt? Why don't you start us off with your whackness?
Okay. Let me just go full into my fucking opinion on the topic.
I mean, yeah, that's what we do in every episode.
Okay. Well, I said I was going to be the whack one because I think you guys have more experience with competitive games, which I think will have a large factoring in the difficulty curve. And I think you just play more difficult games in general. But my opinion on the topic is... game makers can make... You're not making a video game. You want to make a video game that everybody can play, go make your own game studio, make your own fucking video game. Game makers can make whatever they want, and they can make it as difficult as they want, and if they want to add in difficulties, then they can. I'm sorry that you can't play all the games, but if you really want to experience a game and it's just too hard for you, then go watch a Let's Play. Like, now that there are Let's Plays and everything, you can just watch the game. If you can't beat the game, then you're not getting any enjoyment out of playing the game. So you want to watch the story, so just go watch a Let's Play. Like, if your friends are going to give you shit because you didn't actually beat the game, I'm sorry you have shitty friends. I couldn't find the article on it, so maybe I made this up. There is a guy who has no arms that is like a world fighting game champ, or he's beaten Dark Souls. And even if this guy doesn't exist, there are people that play Dark Souls in something called the No Arm Challenge, where they play it with their feet and they beat it. Dark Souls isn't too hard.
There's people who've beaten Dark Souls on Guitar Hero controllers, on DDR pads, on bananas. I've seen crazy.
Yeah, there's that guy. Oh my god.
Yeah, no, these games aren't too hard. You can play it if you really try. If you can't, then you're not having fun playing the game just to play it. So you just want bragging rights. Or you want to experience the story and you can watch it in a Let's Play. That's my opinion. I don't think games should have difficulty sliders if the game maker does not want it to be there. If that means that I can't play a game someday, so be it. Like, I really like the aesthetic of Sekiro. I got to, like, the third boss, and that game is really fucking hard, and I couldn't do it. And I will go back to it someday, maybe, but for now, it's too hard for me, I guess.
Interesting. There's some similarities of your stance and my stance. As with most of your opinions, yours is very like firm and steadfast in a certain point. I agree with what people want should not affect game makers' requirements. Like, if a game maker doesn't want to add different difficulty modes, they shouldn't have to. They're the creator. It's their choice. Mm-hmm. It's their baby. Like, what? Let's parse out everything you discussed and talk about it in pieces. So what, Kyle, as the guest, what's your opinion on that point of should there always be difficulty choices or what?
Oh man, I was going to hold myself to the end because I usually have some extreme views on this, but coming from someone
to rival Matt.
Coming from someone who, when I was younger, I would play all games with the cheat engine enabled and have God mode turned on and just play through it that way. And then going into like heavy multiplayer type games, I'd say it really depends on the game you're playing. I read something that was really interesting involving difficulty in, say, Mario Kart. Because if you look at the difficulty between the Mario Kart like difficulties, and I say that with quotation marks around it, the 50cc, 100cc, and 150cc, the game doesn't get more difficult. The game just gets faster and asks you to put in your inputs faster to, accommodate for that. So I think that's an interesting approach to it. Like, keep the game as it's at its same difficulty, but speed it up, add a little bit more. I think that would be an interesting way to pull it. But it, like Matt said, it really depends on what the developer wants to do. Because the developer is the one who's putting the time and effort into the game. And I've seen multiple times before where people would say, "Oh, but what's the developer intended difficulty?" Like, that just seems weird to me.
You actually touch on a really interesting point we should explore later in the episode of, I think this heavily depends on what increased difficulty is based on. Because like you said, with Mario Kart, they demand faster reaction time for inputting controls. But in a lot of games, increased difficulty is just more fucking HP and damage output for the enemies, which is kind of a different approach to it. So I think it has different implications both ways. But before we jump into that, I want to hear TJ's opinions on this too.
I have a couple. Kyle spun one that I'm just thinking more about that I never really thought about until just now. But that I don't think any game is actually too difficult. I think part of the real problem is, and in two ways, and they connect but don't connect at the same time, is when we're younger, we just don't play all games the smartest way we should, which we figure out when we grow up.
That's fair.
Like, oh, I could do this. Like, you look at yourself playing certain things that were really hard and you're like, oh no, if I just would have done this. I mean, and it's not to take away, because some of the older games, like Sega games, Nintendo games, they're very hard. But that's partially because of what technology was. So I think the evolution of technology has made games easier, mostly. But also, now that we're older, so like you're saying, like the 150cc for Mario Kart, I got really, really good at Mario Kart. I've always been good at the Mario Karts when I'm putting the time in to be good at Mario Kart. So it's one of those things where it takes time to get to that level. And then once you're there, it's not hard. But us as older, responsible adults, for the most part, we don't have the time to invest in what would be what we consider difficult. So it's not that it's difficult, it just takes time, because like most things, practice makes perfect kind of scenario.
Yeah.
So there are games where it's not really difficult, but it is.
That actually touches on my opinion for this as well. Is I don't think there should ever be a requirement or an expectation. Firstly, if you're a game dev, make the game the way you want it to be. That's your baby. However, you should understand that not including like adjustable difficulty is going to greatly reduce the market space that you're going to sell your game to. That's just fact. For a great example is, and this is obviously going to come up a bunch this episode, Dark Souls series. There's no difficulty anything. There's no way to change the difficulty of the game you're experiencing, which is great. I think it's a fantastic way to ensure that the intended experience is brought to the player. However, there's an enormous share of the market that is not interested in Dark Souls at all because it's so fucking difficult. I was one of those people. There was a long time where I'm like, I'm never going to touch that game. Everyone's bitching about how hard it is. And then, I start hanging out with folks like Kyle and TJ and Matt and all these other people. And they're like, oh, it's not that bad. It's, you just got to put the time and effort into it. It's like, okay. And I did have a great time with Dark Souls 1 and 3. They were fantastic. However, my brother, for an example, he likes the idea of it. He wants to explore it more, but it's such a fucking ass pain because it's not his style of game, and he just can't access it. It's not accessible to him because of how difficult it is. So while Matt's right about the Let's Play thing, and he has watched plenty of stuff, he still wants to experience the game personally. But to TJ's point, he doesn't have the time to put in to practice those boss fights to the degree where he needs to be able to progress past them. And, you know, we can sit here and say, well, it's multiplayer, just get a friend to help you. Specific to Dark Souls, that has many other issues, which we won't get into in this episode. But it's nice that the option's there, I guess, kind of thing. So it's weird, because I agree with you to some degree, but I also think you should try to make your game accessible to as many people as possible. So that's why I really like the idea of having controllable difficulty. And interestingly enough, there's more than one way to do difficulty. Because Kyle, you were talking about like the 50cc, 100cc, 150cc.
Right.
Which is basically easy, normal, and hard, more or less. And the way they scale it is reaction time. I recently, just last night, reinstalled and started playing Assassin's Creed Origins, and they added a new thing called, quote, hacking the animus, which allows you to change almost every aspect of the game to include enemy damage output and enemy health to your own health, to your own damage output. You can adjust the scales. I didn't know
about this.
I didn't either until last night. And you can adjust all the different aspects of the game to get the experience you want. Having that kind of controllability of difficulty is fucking brilliant. Because not only do you as the dev get to say, this is the game and this is how I wanted it presented, to the intended difficulty comment that Kyle made, but also, if you're not happy with that, make it the way you want without having to use cheat engine, for example. I think that's fucking brilliant.
That brings up another thing, which is cheating, adding the cheats to the games. My opinion on that is if you own the game, fucking hack it to your happiness.
If it's not online competitive multiplayer, I agree. And that's why I love mods as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that brings up like something interesting that I kind of want to go back in time a bit for. And I'm not, old, but there was, when we all went back and played in like the arcades when we were younger, there was a type of game that was referred to as the quarter munchers, which are games that were made to be difficult to eat your quarters, to make you pay more. And that's, obviously the shittiest version. You get those a lot with these weird loot box systems, where it's games that are difficult until you get a good character drop or a good weapon drop. So that difficulty changed from, we're going to make it so that you're going to pay us more in order to get to the end that you want, to, we're going to make it so that you guys need to understand how the game works. So now that money's not on the line, it's time. It's just kind of that weighing of, is it worth spending the time to get better at this game, or not? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think to more to the point of the question we've brought up here is these games and these companies making these games that are pushing the line on difficulty in some cases. Are those making the gamer base as a whole a more skilled gamer base? Like if we look at a gamer coming in and getting 2 years of experience playing various kinds of games, is their baseline level of skill higher now than when we were kids and reached that 2-year gaming experience? You know what I mean? Like, is it more demanding or less? Because I think there's an argument for both depending on the genre you're discussing.
Right. It's genre and what type of game. Because obviously there's a lot of indie games that pride themselves on being very hard. There's a lot of indie games that pride themselves on being easy.
Yeah, and like the first thing that comes to mind is, I'm sorry, maybe I just suck, but the first couple Mario games were hard as shit. Holy crap.
Here's an example for that too, because you guys know I'm a big Metal Gear fan, and I've talked about it on here. I love the Metal Gear series. I went back to try to play the Nintendo versions. I couldn't even get past the intro.
They're so hard.
They're so hard. I'm like, not even worth trying.
Yeah, whereas now, like from the platformer example I brought up, and I actually haven't played the example I'm going to compare it to, so I think all three of you have, though. Mario, hard as shit back in the day, like from the get-go, more or less. There's a couple easy levels, and then it ramps up pretty quick, and it's a challenging game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, comparable platformer, Ori and the Blind Forest, was it hard out the gate, or did it get hard really quickly? or was it pretty, like, was it a reasonable challenge scaling, and like when you got to boss fights and stuff, it's like, okay, this is more difficult? Or was it easier because there were more new mechanics that were explained better? Like, how do you compare the difficulty scaling of the old OG Mario stuff to something like Ori that's a more modern platformer game?
I don't think it's a one-to-one comparison with Mario to Ori,
Yeah,
because
right,
Ori's
for sure.
Ori's more of a Metroidvania,
Okay.
where you unlock new things and the game starts asking you I think Ori's very, very well built when it comes to difficulty, because it, like, there's a section where it's like, hey, you have a double jump, so you learn, oh, I'm double jumping now. And there's a section where you unlock this like snap ability where you can snap through an enemy and bounce yourself even further. And then the game goes, okay, let's put those two together and see how you work with that.
Okay, so instead of comparing it to Mario, compare it to some of the original Castlevanias, which also were hard as dicks.
Yeah.
I love Metroidvanias, and I feel like a lot of them, it's one of two things. Either the game scales pretty well until it hits a wall, and they've just added too much at once, and it's very hard all of a sudden. And then once you get past that point, you're pretty much fine. Or there are individual map segments that rely on certain different skill usages, and you're going to be bad at one of them, and that's going to be the hardest one for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, so it almost sounds like, So let me know if you guys agree with this kind of understanding of it then, from a Metroidvania perspective. It sounds like the original Metroidvanias back in the day, this is pretty challenging from the beginning and will be continuously challenging, but as you improve your skill, you rise to the challenge bar, essentially, and it never really shakes too much beyond that. Like, obviously there's always gonna be a little bit of a ramp, but once you reach that plateau, it's never gonna be too much more difficult than that. Obviously, boss fights with different mechanics that you have to learn is gonna adjust that, but more or less, it's on a fairly linear, easy gradient up once you hit that bottom bar. Whereas it sounds like the way you're describing things like Ori is they have significant difficulty spikes, almost more like stairs instead of a plateau, like a slowly inclining plateau. Ori sounds more like it's a set of stairs where you reach the quality of gamer you need to be, and then you hit that wall and you have to climb that step, and then you're at that level for a while, then the game demands you to get significantly better again, kind of thing. Does that sound like a reasonable impression of what you guys are describing?
And yeah, and that is a vast majority of games. But to go back to like what you said, we're going to reference this a lot. Dark Souls, it also brings up the level of skill necessary at the bottom.
Yeah.
Where when it comes to Mario, you only need to know that right is right, left is left, and A is jump, and B is run sometimes. But when it comes to Dark Souls, it asks you to know so much in the beginning, and that's where a lot of people fall off on Dark Souls. They go, "This game is too hard.
Udex Gundyr.
Yeah, this game sucks. This game is too hard. I hate it. I'm done," because they don't have those skills necessary, or they don't have the time to put in to get the skills necessary to move forward.
Yeah, you kind of walk in the door and it's like, all right, game on, motherfucker, kind of thing.
Yeah. I will say I think Dark Souls 1 is more welcoming to new players than Dark Souls 3.
I'd argue that too, yeah. Despite the clunky controls.
Well, yeah, the 4-directional kind of sucks, but it's something you get used to.
Which, that's actually
But,
interesting too. I'd love to hear. If you guys still have more points on that, go for it. I was going to lead into something else.
I'm waiting for. I'm gonna transition into the competitive play a little bit. That way.
Okay.
I have more points.
Go for it.
Okay. One thing I did want to amend my initial stance is I think the only time that I feel a little bad for any arguments against my stance are when people are like, I don't have enough time to get, I really want to play this game. I don't have enough time to get good. I just want to play the game. I don't want to watch somebody play it. I just want to play it. I feel a little bad, but also if you really care about something, you'll make the time for it. Whether that's doing it over way longer than you think you should have to, or that's cutting out another extracurricular activity to do it, you'll figure it out, or you didn't need that thing. And you brought this up, Dan. You said that you think that games should be made to be accessible to as many people as possible. I kind of hate that.
Yeah, I can definitely understand not liking that point, but I was speaking from a marketing perspective. If you want to make money as a game dev, that is a hard and fast rule. And that's true of things that aren't games as well.
Yeah, I think there's something to said about not pigeonholing yourself into the most niche of demographics.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't want every game made to be sellable to both the RPG players, the FPS players, the puzzle game players. Like, I don't want that in any way, shape, or form.
It's that's a game development talk, and it is a very fine line to walk, because on one hand you get the EAs where you make a game that's so much of everything that nobody really likes it.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. You need to pick a lane.
I think that's a whole episode we could do too.
That's fair. Just to one more asterisk on that. Also, the more accessible you make every game, the more similar you make every game. And I want to stop playing one game and start playing another, not play the same game with a different skin.
Yeah, so. And I totally agree with that. That's the magic of genres. To a degree, you need to pick a lane, absolutely. And the issue you run into, and stop me if this should be saved for a different episode, but basically you need to understand the lane that you've selected, and you need to recognize that you're assuming a significant amount of risk when you make a game like Dark Souls that's not going to appeal to everyone in that lane. Yeah. Which is totally fine. As long as you belong to a group that can afford that risk if it falls flat, kind of thing.
Yeah. It goes into, again, what type of game do you want to make? Dark Souls was never made to be a, hey, I'm going to come home and I'm just going to chill after a long day of work. It was made to demand your full attention. And going into that chill after a long line of work, there's a game that I actually saw that has a really cool difficulty level, which the game Shadow Warrior, I don't know if all of you have played it, but there is a difficulty on that which is just called I'm here for fun, and the description is you've come home after a hard day of work and you just want to slash up enemies and feel awesome. And it's hey, there you go. Nice. There's a game that fits that perfect thing.
I say I don't want games to be made to have more difficulties just to appeal to people and let more people play them if the game developer doesn't want it. That doesn't mean that I'm not excited when a game developer has here's a super fun chill mode, or there's a fucking Doom skit where Doom Guy is a baby and the demons are walking Doom Guy the baby through the levels, and he's got a squirt gun and they're all pretending to die, and I'm it would be hilarious if that was actually a mode in Doom. You just play baby mode.
That'd be hilarious. I'm in such deep thought about this conversation this whole time. So what I'm trying to answer for myself is, do I want games to be difficult or not? The answer is both, and I don't know exactly. I can't figure out for myself where I put so for Call of Duty. I'm a big FPSer. In Halo, when I get Halo, first time I put it on Legendary for the first time I play through it. I want it to be as hard as possible, but also because I know I'm really good at Halo. So it's not that hard. So it's not really challenging unless it's on Legendary, and I want that challenge. But for Call of Duty, when I play through the story, I just wanted to see the story. I didn't care about it being hard in any way. So I put it on normal, because I don't want it to be too easy, but Yeah. So it's I don't know. And I can't answer. I don't know. I guess it just depends on what the game is. So I know knowingly before I play the game if I want it to be hard or not. But for the most part, I just want them to be challenging.
And I think that speaks volumes to Matt's commentary of Let's Plays have opened that window up pretty significantly. Is if you get the game and you feel it is too challenging and you don't have the option to lower the difficulty, you can still experience the story vicariously. But I think the argument that you're making also really supports the idea of give the players some way to manipulate the difficulty. Even if it's like not changing it to be easier or harder or whatever it is. Give them something. Like, I know there's an example of this happening somewhere, but I think a great way to do that would be like, hey, is the game too hard? Here's baby mode chest. It gives you some free, like, it gives you a sword that's better than most things you've got right now. It'll help you out.
So the Mario method, where, we've seen that you've died on this section 14 times in a row. Let me give you the invincibility power-up so you can go through. Pat, pat, pat. It's okay.
Maybe not to that extreme, like still make the player try, but yeah, basically like something where the player makes the conscious choice to take the thing that makes the game a little bit easier, and probably just for a little while. Like not through the whole thing. I think that's a decent approach.
They still have to try with the invincibility thing. Mario is still a platformer.
Yeah.
They've just removed the enemies.
Yeah.
But it goes into the narrative, and for me, I like the narrative to reflect the difficulty, where you have a game like Dark Souls, where part of the narrative is overcoming ridiculously hard odds and just feeling so awesome coming out on the end, being like, I failed 14 times, but in the end, Ornstein and Smo are dead. Screw them. I'm moving on. I'm more rejuvenated than ever. Let's go.
Yeah.
And then you have Doom, where it's like you want to feel like the biggest badass in all of Mars, and you want to rip and tear your way through all the demons. So crank it down to easy if that makes it if it makes you feel that way. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Difficulty as a component of the narrative. I never really thought of that.
I think I forget if there's even, I think there's like normal and hard on it, but Resident Evil did a really good job balancing that, especially in the earlier days, because of the puzzles. So the puzzles made it hard, but the game itself really wasn't that hard. Some of the bosses were, but unfortunately, the newer, like once it got to Resident Evil 4, one of my gripes with Resident Evil 4 was it was too easy. Like the boss fights and stuff were so simple and easy that it kind of ruined the game a little bit.
Do you think that easiness you experienced has to do with your experience with the franchise as a whole? Like, if I went and picked it up having never played Resident Evils, do you think it'd still be easy?
Yeah.
Okay.
The like, especially the final boss, because like some of the bosses were difficult, and then you get to the final boss, and he was like a breeze in the wind.
See,
and it had nothing to do with like the equipment you had or anything. It just, they made it super easy, and it was just like, okay.
There's a completely inverted, more recent experience that I know Kyle can vouch for. Game called Remnant from the Ashes. The whole game was like, all right, this is kind of like easy to a little challenging, was my experience through most of it. Kyle, feel free to confirm or deny.
I agree.
It was pretty easy through most of it, especially playing co-op. And then you get to the final boss, and you're just like, how the fucking shit am I supposed to do anything here? It is ridiculous.
Well, it's because the final boss brings up a thing that the game didn't really mention that well, which is the game expects you to grind. If you are not ground up enough to get to the point where you can take on this boss, go back and get to it, and I hate that.
If you're not a fine paste by the time you get to that boss, ground up.
Yep, keep getting ground.
Yeah, and I think it would have been a more like enjoyable experience if they actually amped the difficulty up in checkpoints. So like, I shouldn't be able to get to the final boss in my first world run. Like, if they had made it so maybe the second level final boss was tough enough to where I needed to run the first level like 4 times, then like if they kept doing that at checkpoints at every world level, by the time you got to the final boss the first time, it felt like maybe I have a chance, but it'd be a lot easier if I ran through it all again, kind of thing. It would have felt less shit than, wow, I pub stomped the whole fucking game up to the final boss, and now I'm like a little baby boy poking at it.
And
like, that felt bad.
And these are like opposite scenarios, and I think what it really is consistency.
Yeah, honestly, if they had made it more of a consistent flow of difficulty upward, the ending wouldn't have been disappointing. And for your example with Resident Evil, if they had made the difficulty, do anything throughout the whole game.
Well, Resident Evil's a weird one because its roots are in horror. And part of horror is the game is hard, the game is scary. You are left alone with, 6 bullets in your gun, and you don't know if you can spend it on these guys and keep living.
Yep.
It demands that sort of what's the word? Like inventory management.
Mm-hmm.
But then you hit Resident Evil 4 and it turns into an action game, and that horror, that difficulty is out the window. And it's simply because it includes now, I've only played Resident Evil 2, but I've watched playthroughs of Resident Evil 4. The ability that you can, like, not judo chop, but, like, freaking toss enemies. You can kick them in the head and have their heads explode. And it's like, wait, what happened to the big scary zombies in 2 or 3?
No, you can do that, but that's not part of the issue. Is they let you have too much ammo in Resident Evil 4, which is nice, honestly, going through it, but because you can purchase it and stuff, then there's like a shop. They incorporated a shop. You can just be like,
Okay.
all right, I need that.
I've never played any of the Resident Evil games. I have only watched the new remakes played.
Okay.
Has 4 been remade?
No.
There's talk of them possibly
And
making it.
is... I'm going to explain this the funny way because it's funny. Is 4 the one where you go bitch dumpster?
Huh.
Oh, you tell the girl to hide in a dumpster. I think it's 4.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So you 4
What?
the entire game of 4, as I understand it, is an escort mission, or at least most of it. The easy way to get through that is usually towards the beginning of any level there is a dumpster that you can tell the little girl to hide in, and zombies can't get in it. So you can get to the beginning of the level, bitch dumpster, go through the level. Then, as long as you're willing to run all the way back, once all the zombies are dead, pick her up and take her back through the empty level. It is easier.
Oh, I didn't do that.
I've
Huh.
never
Okay.
heard of that, but I think
That sounds
hilarious.
That's
Fucking wild.
hilarious, and
That-
I completely
only-
believe it.
I only know of Resident Evil through Michael from Achievement Hunter, and the way he describes it is one of them is the bitch dumpster game.
So I still need to play through the remastered Resident Evil 2, but the OG Resident Evil 2 is like my first take on it, and I think it's the best out of the whole series.
Good old tank controls.
And I did it on N64, so that was like extra hard because of the way the control stick was. But anyways, it just took getting used to. What made it so challenging was his expenditure of inventory. Like, you had to be so picky and choosy because it was so hard to find ammo, and they threw a lot at you.
I have a new point to move on to when you
Okay.
guys are done here.
Also, when we want to get to competitive, I have like a short story that I want to lead into it with. So, let me
Okay.
know.
Sure.
The next thing I want to hit on, because the original topic for this episode was making us be better gamers or gatekeeping us. More on the gatekeeping side of the house, what are your guys' thoughts on keeping the good ending for only the hardest difficulty thing? Like, you guys know what I mean by that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I fucking hate that. I think that's some bullshit. Like, come on.
I don't
I-
care, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with that mostly.
I wish it wasn't always that way, but it does tend to be that way. But I'm also not somebody who minds going through a game, playing it the way I want to play it, and seeing which ending I get.
Exactly. I see it as more of a reward for people who have tried their hardest and played it on the hardest difficulty. And way back when, say with like Mega Man or Sonic, they gave you a little extra when you went the extra mile to collect all the little goobers or to go get these other things. And nowadays, everyone kind of wants access to those things. So they now put the official end under the hardest difficulty, which I don't personally care about. As someone who's never beaten Halo on Legendary, I've never seen the Legendary endings. I just look at them up on YouTube and I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I honestly didn't even know Legendary had
what's up,
different
Dan?
endings because I only beat him on Legendary.
I don't like that, because when I sit down and play a game, depending on what genre it is, like, I'm just I'm that kind of guy who's like, I'm not great at FPSs, but I'm not going to spend the time. I don't have the time. It's not important enough to me. But I do care about this story, and I'd like to see the actual end that you want the players to see and have, kind of thing. And
So-
like, I will try my hardest regardless of what difficulty it's on. I'm going to put the same amount of try in. So the fact that I'm robbed of the official badass ending because I didn't play on the hardest mode because I don't want to play the game for the 72 hours it would take, and I'd rather just put the 48 in to play it on normal. Like, I get the idea of a reward, but come on, I still tried my hardest.
So one sec, because I agree with you, Dan, and the reason why I agree, like a ton, is because most of the games that are like that, I'm playing for the story. I'm not playing to be challenged, and I want the story. So it shouldn't be a reward to have to play it on the hardest mode just to see the story through my playing through it. I don't want to, because I don't like to watch, like you're saying, to like watch people. I don't like watching games unless I've already played them and beat them. I don't want to have someone do it for me.
Yeah. I agree with TJ in that if the game's selling point is the story, then I shouldn't have to play a difficulty to get the story if there are multiple difficulties. Now, if the game's selling point is the story and there's one difficulty, this is a moot point.
Yeah.
But I also liked what Kyle was saying earlier, where in Mega Man, you don't get necessarily the good ending, air quotes, by doing all the stuff. You just get like the special shiny good ending. It's like a little better. It's not like if you don't do these things, you get the bad end. You just get a shiny or good end if you do all the extra things. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with making like a little bonus, like, oh, you saved the world and all this stuff is cool, and oh yeah, if you did all the extra shit in, I don't know, in Spyro, like if you actually go through and save all the dragons and get the good ending, then in the end cutscene, there are more people cheering for you that you succeeded because you saved more people.
Yeah, and I'm okay with the ending being different based on, like, did you collect all the items or something, or did you make these choices in the game? That's fine. I'm talking about specifically, I didn't play on the hardest difficulty, so there is no way at all possible for me to get a certain ending. That's what I'm arguing against.
At least with the Spyro thing, there is no difficulties.
Yeah.
It is just really fucking hard to get some of those dragons. As somebody who has gotten everything in every Spyro game, it's really fucking hard. So arguably, it's just, depending on how much of the game you want to do, there are walls of difficulty you will have to go over.
I'm fine with that approach. What I'm upset about is, I think it was Mass Effect maybe had it where like you had to beat the game on the hardest difficulty and collect all the things and get 100% or whatever. Like, and I get that the ending isn't really that different, but the point
you had
is
to
there.
play the multiplayer to reduce the
Would
bar. It was so stupid.
Yeah.
Would it help if, because a lot of these instances, they call this ending the true ending. Would it help if they didn't call it the true ending and they just called it like the, this is a facetious name, but like the Happy Sunshine ending, or like the
Yeah, I get the point.
yeah.
I think it only helps if that ending doesn't further the story into a sequel.
Yeah, that's my issue, is to use the Mass Effect example.
With
I don't
the
remember
canon ending.
Yeah, whichever
Okay.
one shows like your hand twitching at the end, he might still be alive or whatever. Like, that's some bullshit that only the hardest mode gets to see that. Now, granted, I can go look it up on YouTube, like Kyle said, so ultimately it's not that big of a deal, but it still doesn't feel fun to get gatekept and knowingly be gatekept. Because when I find that out 2 chapters into a 10-chapter game, I say, well, fuck, I didn't select the hardest difficulty. What's the point of playing? I'm not going to see everything. Like, it totally sucks my motivation away.
I can see that.
But that could just be the way I'm motivated by things. But I just wanted to bring that up. Interesting points all around from that. I think that the 4 of us here have run the gambit of opinions on that. TJ, you wanted to talk about competitive aspects of this, if you want to lead into that.
So, way back in the beginning, I forget exactly what we were talking about, pertaining to this, but I was thinking more about like difficulty levels and stuff. And that, so me and my cousins, when I was younger, when their house was getting built, they moved in with me and my dad. So there was 4 of us in a room, all guys, all hockey players. And we had NHL, whatever the year was. I think I've talked a little bit about this. I forget if it was on the show or not, but we started playing whatever NHL hockey game was, whatever year it was, and we started like seasons together and stuff. So we were always playing against each other. And at first, we always would play with the hardest difficulty for computer when we played against them. It was actually pretty challenging. You know, it'd be close games. We would lose a lot. The more we played against each other, and we were the type too where we would play the game like an actual hockey game, not like a video game kind of. I mean, it's still a video game, but like cycling the puck and doing like a lot of things that you would do in real world hockey. And then it got to a point where the hardest difficulty in the game was like easy mode. Like I would win 25 to like 2. Like I could have up to 30 goals, like, which is a ton. Like you shouldn't be able to do that. And the only time the computer scored is when it was like, no, like you're doing so good, where it was just like, no. And it would like
the game
force
just
it.
cheated in its favor.
And you're saying you got that good because you played against other people.
Right. So then I think it's an interesting wall. And I think that too, that's why I'm so good at Halo, because I played so much multiplayer, that going into anything but legendary feels easy to me. So I think when you throw multiplayer, and especially competitive multiplayer, into a game, that difficulty level really wavers against AI.
Yeah, Kyle, I think you actually have a pretty good comparison to this. Correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but you play a lot of Rainbow Six Siege, or at least used to, and you play a lot of that competitively, or at least multiplayer with a team. And then sometimes they'll come out with events where it's just like, you know, an AI story level. I remember they had one for like Halloween a couple years back or something. You had me play with you. That, like, what was the difficulty comparison to a multiplayer match versus that AI driven kind of story plot one? Did you have a similar experience as TJ?
It's super weird. So I think shooters are an entirely different can of worms, because it brings into like account a lot of other things. How with Rainbow, it's
hard.
Talk to.
I understand your frustration and what you're trying to say.
You can talk to a lot of people, and they'll say, "Well, it's not just the shooting; it's the tacticality and blah 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 blah." But I see what you're saying, because there are game modes in Rainbow where I see it as more of shooting galleries, where you need to go in there and like warm up your reflexes and whatnot, and those are difficult because they throw like a group of 30 enemies charge at you. Meanwhile, in Rainbow multiplayer, the most on an enemy team is 5. So you're like, well, hold on, I only have 30 bullets in this mag, and I'm not popping headshots every single time. I'm not going to survive this wave.
Yeah.
Interesting. So they make it difficult through different means.
Yeah, and yeah, but with the multiplayer topic, it definitely changes the way that you view games, because I know that when we occasionally do like game nights and we play Gmod, I have a better understanding of guns, and if I know a gun has a kick, I can usually pull down on the kick and get more shots on target than most anybody else playing the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me, priority target number 1 to kill.
Yeah.
And I don't mind that, because I know that I'm good at these shooters, and I know I understand the mechanics of the shooters because I played them for so long. But I do agree, playing multiplayer, it forces you to learn the skills, because you want to be better against these other players. And either you can say, multiplayer's not the thing for me. I like feeling powerful. I like playing against AI who flinch, who act in, programmed routes, where when you're playing against players, you need to understand They can do AD strafing. They can jump around. They can prone. It's a lot of things.
It's
Jumping.
almost like when you play against computer or AI in any circumstance, once you reach that level of I'm good enough to win, you stop trying to get better because you know you're good enough. Whereas in multiplayer, there's always going to be someone who's going to get the drop on you. So you always have to try and be better and better and better.
There's always someone better.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think we gatekeep ourselves sometimes into difficulty.
If you're not playing a multiplayer one, that's interesting. I never considered that as multiplayer being the driver to continuously get better compared to AI opponents causing you to kind of stalemate and plateau at a certain point.
A terrible.
Because if there is something that forces you to learn the mechanics, it's another player.
Yeah.
Because I played back in middle school and high school. I played the shit out of TF2. And I knew how players would usually play. And I played a sniper because I got really good at shooting in that game. So I knew that there were snipers who liked to, instead of walk out of cover very slowly, they liked to jump out of cover. So I started learning, okay, the sniper moves at this speed. That means his jump arc is this. So when he's jumping, I just need to aim here and I'll kill him before he touches the ground.
Good lord.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
See, that's the kind of stuff I have no interest in ever putting enough time into to learn.
But, well, I'll there's two things. I can't remember the other thing, so I'll just say this. But you do the same thing in MMORPGs, just differently. Like, you calculate all the things you need to do. Healing,
right, we're talking
damage.
shooters.
I guess, yeah.
We understand
It's all the same
shooters
thing.
a lot more, you and me, TJ.
Mhm.
But, like, just to open up something I don't know about, you guys, or, like, I know Dan can wipe the floor with me in any 4X game or, like, a Civ game. Because those mechanics just don't click in my brain. And I don't go, this is gatekeeping. Civ sucks. It's the worst. It's just like, no, I'm not good at resource management. I suck at this.
And I think, like, when it comes to shooters, too, a lot of it eventually just becomes secondhand. Like, I don't even think about certain things. Like, when I was really good at Halo, timings and stuff, I just knew. Like, I didn't have to count things out. I just instantly.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting the point Kyle brought up of, like, different people have that feel for different games. And, like, TJ, you'd kick all our asses at a sports game, and Matt, I'd never be able to hold a candle to you in basically any fucking platformer ever from what I've seen. I think it has to do with the way our brains are wired, because when it comes to shooters in Kyle's aspect and TJ's aspect, a lot of the jump arc and the kickback of the gun, a lot of it has to do with the feel and the experience and understanding that's what you need to watch for, which I fucking don't understand how to even begin with that. But when it comes to, like, resource management, I understand how to look at the numbers and draw conclusions of what affects what and how I can manipulate one thing to change something 4 steps down the road. Versus with a platformer, that's again a little bit more about the feel, but almost the mechanical, the tactile function of how to manipulate the controls and the timing of when to do things. So a lot of these different things are really subtle, and they're in completely different ways of how we would think about them. So I think that's kind of an interesting aspect of, I'd be totally comfortable with a fucking hard as nails colony management game. Whereas I'm sure none of you guys would want to sit there and pore over spreadsheets as long as I would to get it, kind of thing. So it's like I'm willing to put in the effort into a certain genre to understand a level of difficulty, whereas I wouldn't in others, and that choice is different for each of us, kind of thing.
But my city would look pretty, Dan.
And that goes
Yeah, give
And
it
that goes
infinite
back to-
resources and time.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
and
no,
that goes back to
I think.
the original. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Kyle.
I was going to say, that goes back to the original point of us saying that when it comes to games, they're all asking you to learn something. It's just, how high is the floor and how high is the ceiling?
Yeah.
And how far are you willing to jump, I think is a big part of that too.
Absolutely. Like, if you want to feel like you know nothing about a game, watch a speed run. Because when it comes to platformers,
Oh my
if you
God.
thought you were...
God.
I don't
when it
even
comes to,
want-
like,
yeah. No.
watch Mario Odyssey or whatever the newest one is, and watch a speedrun of that, and you're like, oh, I knew how to jump and do the hat twirl, but doing these rolls and dips and dives and jumping and holy crap, you go
can,
across
like,
the
jump,
map.
roll, hat, twirl, roll, jump, roll, hat, twirl, roll.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember because there's like a meme of like, if you want to have it, this is what anxiety feels like, and it's a Mario, and just the turtle shell and bouncing it off, and like, oh my god, I was like, there's the time that it takes to figure that, like, no way I would ever wanna. It's awesome, like mad respect to the people who can do it, but yeah, no.
But you don't hear people complaining about gatekeeping in Mario because the floor is so low.
I think, I think to try and put a relatively firm answer on the question we started with here, I think it comes down. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, if we're at the answer portion, I did want to ask a question before we start the finalization.
Go for it.
Okay, have we all played Dark Souls?
No.
I think TJ is the WAQ one on that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, for the three of us that have, do you feel like you are better at least those kinds of games having played Dark Souls?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Oh.
So, I mean, at the very least, pushing difficulty in gaming, pushing us to be better, I would argue, yes. Dark Souls having a single difficulty has made the people that play it better at those kinds of games, at least. Do you think any of that applies outside of Dark Souls genre, outside of, I don't know, 3D combat?
Yeah.
Depends on the topic.
I guess here's a great comparison to put it in a concrete question, and I'll ask Kyle, since I came up with the question and Matt posed the original thing here. Kyle, does your experience in Dark Souls and your confidence from Dark Souls make you better at playing The Witcher 3?
I played The Witcher on easy. I'm sorry.
Well, but still, the question's still relevant. Like, the skills you built in Dark Souls 3, or Dark Souls 1, or whatever Dark Souls, did that help you conform and develop faster in The Witcher 3? Which is semi-similar, but pretty fucking different at the same time.
I would say no, because when I played The Witcher, I almost never blocked. I just sliced into everyone. I used the shield spell to, whenever I got hit, it wouldn't stop me from continuing to slice into everyone. So I would say those skills did not transfer.
I think they absolutely did for me, which is weird.
I
totally lean on the dodging patterns I've learned in Dark Souls, like attack, 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 dodge, 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 attack, attack, dodge, dodge. Like, walk around now that I'm far away, regain my resources.
Okay.
Interesting.
I do think for sure skills pick up and transfer. And I have a great example through a multiplayer game being League. So me playing a bunch of League of Legends made me decent at Dota. But if I would have got really good at Dota, I'd be better at League. But by playing a lot of League, I just wiped the floor with Hero of the Storms.
Yeah, interesting. It's as curious on that. I wonder why.
I'm not sure if those are apt comparisons, because those are all same genre games.
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming. I think comparing, did playing League make you a better StarCraft 2 player? I think would be a more close comparison to Dark Souls into Witcher 3.
My bad. I thought there was, I don't know Dark Souls. I thought they were similar. Okay, my bad. But I do think that skills can transfer over, at least within the same genre then.
Yeah, and I think genre specific, absolutely, which I think Matt was implying. But cross genre is a pretty interesting exploration. And I think that's going to be on a case by case basis based on games.
It's really interesting because now that you bring up the Dark Souls going into other things, I have noticed that when I play certain games, I expect bosses to have like certain wind up times and attack times, and when they fall out of that, I'm really thrown off in a game and I go, holy shit, this game's a lot harder than I expect, because I have to unlearn Dark Souls and learn this new game that I'm playing. Because I can't block his, sideways attack. I can't jump over it. I need to jump to the left or right or whatever.
Yeah.
I personally think that pushing through the hard part of Dark Souls and Bloodborne has taught me that, like, I can get through quite a bit in a game at least.
Yeah. So I think with all of those observations in mind, probably a firm standpoint here would be, if it's something you're interested in enough, the difficulty will drive you to be a better gamer. But you have to have that personal internal motivation to want to be the better gamer first.
It's why would you buy a game that's known to be hard if you're not willing to put the time into it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just like, why would you sign up for a club sport if you're not willing to learn the sport?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because I have to sign up for a certain number of extracurricular activities.
Okay, outside of that.
Completely
Yeah.
off topic, but last night, which will slightly date this episode, but I went to meet my dad at Buffalo Wild Wings, and on the TVs had the Ohio State game, which was about to come on for football, and League of Legends, the World Tournament, going on side by side
In a bar?
in a bar.
Holy shit.
That's
Dude,
dope.
that's wild.
I know.
I
I don't
I
even
know-
like
I-
League, and that's fucking awesome.
It was.
I
at
know
the end of the-
ESPN's been trying something out where they've been broadcasting esports.
and it's getting bigger and bigger, and I'm like, this feels good. Like just sitting there.
Mhm.
It wasn't on, they didn't have it on surround. The football game was on that, but still, I was like, I mean, side by side. I took a picture of it side by side. It was the end of Worlds. They were going into the interviews and stuff like that, and then the start of the football game. I was like, this is great. Like, what a great step.
That's
in-
cool.
That's
that.
awesome.
Yeah, I think you guys would appreciate that.
I do want to touch on, because one of the most common things that people think of when you say gatekeeping is community.
Yeah,
And-
community blocking
Yeah.
people. I
Yeah.
could see that.
And my stance is, if you're so much of a fucking dick that you can't let people enjoy a game that they purchase because they don't know everything about it or they're not good enough, why? Like, shouldn't you be happy that people are playing a game that you love?
Yeah, no, I think we're on the same page on that one.
Yeah, it goes back to my point of, if a game is too hard and you really want to play it, I mean, do you want to play it because it's hard, you want like bragging rights with your friends, or do you want to play it to experience the story? Because if it's a story, you can watch a let's play, and if it's bragging rights with your friends, I'm sorry, your friends suck, and that's something you need with them.
It's such a difficult. I'm gonna disagree.
Okay.
I think in a large group of cases, this is true. And you should be excited that more people are playing your game, and you should help them understand to the level.
Mhm.
What I'm not okay with is the company changing the core of the game to cater to bringing more people in because they don't understand how to enter it.
I mean,
'Cause
I agree.
I'm sorry, Blizzard, but you fucking ruined everything I liked about WoW to bring more people in. Instead, you should have encouraged the community to teach new people. Come up with something like Final Fantasy's mentor
crown
system. Yeah, give an incentive to help experienced players teach new players the important stuff. Or come up with a better way to teach players how to play the fucking game.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I want to go into a story just off of what you talked about.
Go for it.
So, way back, and I mean way back, like 5 years ago, I think,
Mhm.
there was a big game coming out called For Honor.
Oh my fucking
Yeah.
god.
And I was interested in it because, cool, it's medieval fighting, you get to swing a sword, and you're a big badass. And the game, the highlight of the game were these one-on-one battles with other players. And I would play it, and I would get mopped every single time. And these players just would destroy me, because one thing I did not understand was For Honor was more of a fighting game than a, like, hack and slash combat game. And there was one time that I was doing a one-on-one with another player, and he beat me soundly in the first round, and we had 2 more rounds to go. And he started typing in chat, which I had never seen another player do outside of shit talking. And he started mentioning, hey, your attack that you're doing is really easily readable. You might want to start throwing in this and this. And he started mentoring me. And it was like this one bright spot in a game that was just horrible for me. I did not enjoy it. But this one player, who was really good at the game, to me, I don't know if he was good at the game in general, but he went out of his way to teach me how to play the game better. So I don't remember his name, but I want to thank him because it put a couple more hours into the game that I was willing to play.
That's cool.
Yes, honestly, some of my favorite memories of Final Fantasy XIV that aren't shared with actual people I know are going through daily roulette things, and either I'm sucking ass and somebody's like, hey man, you gotta do this, or that thing that you keep standing in, it's doing this to you. Or counter, me telling that to somebody else, like, hey dude, the poison on the first boss of Thousand Maws, he's just gonna keep applying it. Don't waste your time taking it off the tank. Leave it on one person, take it off the DPS.
Yeah. Yeah, getting to help the community understand the game better is actually a brilliant, like, fun moment. So
Just being kind in games makes them so much better for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I could bring up so many stories of just like in League and stuff like that where I've had wonderful experiences because everyone was cool, or there's like some really cool little things that happened.
And I highly
Person to
recommend
person.
it to anyone who plays these multiplayer games where you interact with people. Not to be a dick if someone's fucking up, but to try to, like, I don't know, reach out to them and say, hey, like, I was playing Apex 3 days ago, and this guy was like, sorry, I'm sucking, I'm doing a terrible job. And I'm like, dude, you're learning the game, or you're whatever. Just, one of the things you can know is if your shield goes down and you don't have time to recharge it, you can pick one up off the ground and it's fully charged for you. And he didn't know that, and I was like, there you go. You learned something, and I taught it, and I'm not being an asshole who's shutting you down because you're not playing at a high level. It's, you know, it's a chance for people to learn, and let them learn. Don't quash all their hopes.
Yeah.
yeah. Definitely agree with that one.
We need to do a feel good episode just of all good stories. Of gamer experiences.
But Kyle, as a guest, do you have any shout outs to anything you want to do? Any social media stuff you're part of, or anything you want people to go check out?
No, I'm pretty lurky when it comes to media. I sit and read in the background. But thanks for inviting me to your sausage fest here. This
Yeah,
was
no
fun.
problem.
Thank you for
Yeah.
coming.
But TJ, you want to take us out?
Yeah. This has been the WAQ Show. Thank you all for listening. I'm your host, TJ.
Matt.
I'm Dan.
And that's Kyle.
That's why I'm a guest.
All right.